Hey, what's going on YouTube? Season 2, JC here again with WEDGE Concepts. And in this video, I'm gonna give you some tips or some strategies to help you pay down some credit card debt. All right? So let's go ahead and get right to it. All right, thank you for stopping by my channel. I really appreciate you. I think that this video, I'm gonna keep it really short and simple. You should be able to, or we should be able to go through it in maybe about 5 minutes, I'm hoping, right? Okay, so you have credit card debt. You may have multiple credit cards. You're paying the minimum balance or you're paying a little bit more, but you're still not able to really knock down that debt. So what can we do? What can you do to kind of speed that up, right? So one of the ways that you can do it is called the Avalanche Method, or the Avalanche debt something, but just call it the Avalanche for right now. And the cool thing about this is that you start with the credit cards with the highest interest rate. Okay, so you take all your credit cards, you write down what the interest rates are. The one with the highest interest rate is what you're going to pay first, or you pay the most. So you pay the minimum balance on your other cards, but you're going to pay the most with the highest interest. Now, this is going to be good for those who tend to think long term, because obviously if you have a credit card that has a 22% APR versus a card that has a 9% APR, it makes more sense to go ahead and do the 22% if you're using the Avalanche method. Now, another way is called the Snowball Method. And the Snowball is pretty cool because what you do is you organize your credit cards starting with the credit cards with the lowest limit, right? So you got 3 credit cards. You got one that has $500, you got one that has $15, one that has $2,000. So you pay off the smallest amount first, that credit card first. And it kind of gets you into a snowball where once you knock that one down and that's back down to zero, then you can start attacking your next card. And of course, you're still paying the minimum on the other cards, but you're kind of aggressively going after the one with the lowest. So hopefully these small wins will keep you motivated and keep you grinding, so that way you can, work your way up to the bigger debt. Of course, you can always do a balance transfer. And this is not one of my favorites, but it does make sense, right? So let's say you are paying the minimum and your credit score is decent, because you got to apply for a credit card that has a 0% APR for at least a year. I mean, hopefully, if you can find one that's say, 18 months, that'll be dope. So what you'll do is you'll go ahead and get that credit card, and you will basically initiate a transfer where you transfer all of your balances over, all of your credit card balances over to this one card. Of course, this goes under the assumption that this 0% APR is a high enough limit. If it's not, then you'll just have to do one card at a time, or but you can work it out. But the point is that you got 18 months or 12 months with 0 APR. That way you don't have to worry about the interest, and those cards are back down to 0. Then the other way is very similar to, a credit card, and that's getting a personal loan. I'm really not a fan of a personal loan, because with the personal loan, you'll be locked in to pay a certain amount monthly. There is no more of that, pay $32 or $25 minimum payment. Like, you're going to have to pay, depending on how much you have, $270 a month every month. You can't pay $260. You can't pay $200. So I'm not really a fan of that. But what you can do is, it's kind of like your alternative method, instead of doing of consolidating your debt, right? So you take your 3 credit cards, or how many credit cards you have, You total the balance, you get a loan for that. So let's say your debt is $10,000, $11,000. You'll go ahead and get the loan for $11,000. You'll take that loan money, pay off all your credit cards, get it back down to zero, and then you'll just pay this one lump sum. That's much better than going to some third party. I definitely believe that, than to go with some kind of company that's going to do some kind of debt consolidation. Now, the last way is my favorite, which is called velocity banking. It's kind of tricky to pull off, and I think I may have to do an entire video on velocity banking, or you can just just type in, search Google velocity banking. It's a pretty neat concept. So this is what happens. Ideally, you want to already have a line of credit, but what you'll do is you will pretty much spend your entire paycheck on one particular credit card to knock it down to zero. Okay, so to paint the picture, let's say you got two credit cards. You have a credit card that has $1,000 balance on it. You have a credit card that has $3,000 on it, right? And let's say you can pay $2,000 a month, or that's, well, I guess I'll say $2,000 a month just for the example, but that doesn't seem like a lot at all. But what happened is, when you get paid that $1,000 every pay period, you would actually take that $1,000. Of course, you'll leave some cash, so we'll say like $800 out of that $1,000. You would take $800 and you'll chunk it. That's what they call it. You chunk it. So you would chunk it towards that debt, that credit card. So now you knock that down to $200. But then you'd be like, okay, well, how am I going to spend money? You still got to use that credit card, because now you've transferred the cash. So you've knocked that down. So now you still have a limit. So you can still use the cash and you still use that credit card. I mean, so does that make sense? So it has $1,000 balance. You chunk over 800. You bring that down to 200. Okay. Now you have this credit card that now you have $800 of spending left, before you get back to 1,000. You use that card like you normally would. Of course, being mindful not to overspend and things like that, because you're trying to reduce your debt. And then as you get paid again, you keep attacking that till that's down to zero. And then you'll use your paycheck and go after another card, and you'll repeat the process. And again, I'll do a whole video on it. But the point is that you'll basically be living through your credit card. So even though when you pay the card down, you got to time it right, because there's still some strategy involved in there, meaning that if your statement ends on the 8th of the month, okay, you want to take your $800 and apply it on the 5th or 6th. That way it has time to process, and then that $200 is what's going to be reported to the credit bureaus. And then that opens up the opportunity where you can get that 0% card. It's a way to do it, but it's called velocity banking. So again, you got the Avalanche Method, where you take your highest interest rate cards. You start with that first, do the minimum for everything else, pay more towards that. You're going to have your Snowball, where you start with your lowest balance. You attack that first, gaining momentum. As you begin to pay that off, you start the next card until you're out of debt. You have your balance transfer, when you go out and get a 0% credit card APR for 12 months, 18 months. Or you can do a personal loan, which will allow you to consolidate all of your credit card bills into one lump sum, because you'll take your loan, you'll pay off all your credit cards, and then you'll just be repaying back the loan. And then you have velocity banking, where you're pretty much taking 90% of your paycheck, putting it on the credit card, knocking that down, using the credit card as you see fit, and then continue that process all over again until you are debt free from your credit cards. All right. So I hope that was helpful. Hope that was useful. Hope that gave you a few ideas, a few tips. Again, definitely check out the velocity banking. I think I'll go ahead and do a video on that sometime on my, I'll put that on my agenda, my to-do list. Okay, so you know how it goes. Do me a favor. Do not click subscribe. Do not click the like button. But take what you've heard, what you've learned, apply it, use it, teach someone else, and let's go ahead and build together. Okay? Take care.